Grief doesn't happen in a vacuum. When a person dies, somebody we love, somebody we're connected to, it is the most important thing that could happen to us. When a person dies, it feels like the world stops. W.H. Auden wrote a beautiful poem called Funeral Blues, and the very first line is "Stop all the clocks!" Exclamation point. Stop all the clocks. The death of a person totally changes the world, and it changes our world. And we need time, we need space, we need energy to be able to adjust to all the changes that loss has brought into our life. But grief doesn't happen in a vacuum. Death is very inconvenient because life continues to go on. The sun comes up and goes down each day. The calendar rolls by day after day, week after week, month after month. And we are left just trying to make our way through. Personal events, our own lives that we have scheduled, worldwide and community events, things that are happening in the world and in our community that we don't have, any kind of control over. We got family situations. Oh, and truly the most abundant thing that is going on is just that daily mundane stuff of life. And all of this stuff has a bearing on our grief as we go through it. All of it is really impactful in what we are going through. And what we end up doing is we're grieving and we're juggling that extra stuff. As I like to call it, really what we're doing is grieving in real life. Dr. Bill Warden, in talking about grief, talks about the concurrent losses and the stressors, that this is a really important element that goes into each of our individual grief experiences. And we have all of that, and these individual losses and these concurrent stressors that we have really do impact. And what I'd like to do is kind of bring some of those up for you here. If I'm sure you've got a list of your own, and I invite you to put that in the chat. Put that down there, the things that are going on in your life that are impacting your grief. But I want to bring some of this stuff up that maybe you hadn't thought about, so that you can realize while you're grieving just how much you are managing. So here's a place to start. What are those places where your person is missing? There's a lot of just daily chores. It takes a lot to run a household. That's why, if you remember that picture of that woman that was on the front slide, she's got a spatula and a spoon in one hand and a bag of groceries in the other, and all representing to me the daily chores that are going on. Kids got to be taken care of. Kids got school and they need a tutor. Cars continue to need maintenance and gas and oil and taken care of and everything. Finances, bills have to be paid, taxes have to be done. The yard continues to grow and the house still needs painting or a window fixed or, a drain unplugged or whatever. All of these are just the normal kind of mundane things that happen to us in our life. And when we have a spouse around the house, we've got those things are divided up oftentimes. We divvy up those responsibilities. And if you're living life on your own, they're still there. And you've got to figure them out on your own. So, think about your own life and all of the activities and what are the duties that you have to do. And keep those in your mind so that there's a lot going on with you. All of that stuff is there and it still needs to be handled. It's not like the clocks get to stop and so does the grass. It quits growing. No, the trash still needs to be emptied. Laundry piles up. car needs to have its tires aired up, all kinds of things. And those are chores that need to be done. That's one place where your person is missing, and things that you have to work with and have to juggle. We also have where that person is gone, those habits of our relationships. Come home from work and maybe we're used to debriefing and talking about our day and just kind of unloading and letting go with some stuff. And now that person isn't there. Well, we've lost our kind of our counselor or our blank wall that we can bounce things off of. Maybe we had a regular date night or movie night with Netflix, a regular schedule. Our weeks have a rhythm to them, just like our days do and the months do. We kind of know what's going up. And when our person dies, all of that comes apart. And so the habits of the relationships really do impact our loss and how we're going to have to make our way through it. Each one of those times that comes up and everything, reminds us of the absence of our person. You go to set the table and now you only need to put down one plate and fork and knife and not two or three, whatever it may be. And just like the unseen splendor that we get in our finger when we're working out somewhere and you touch that and boy, the pain is sharp and it reminds us of our loss again. Those are things that are a part of your everyday grieving. And there's some more. What's about all that stuff that's going on around us? I looked at that picture and the woman's got antenna sticking up above her head, and all, and it's sort of like keeping track of the world issues that are going on around us. Again, I mentioned those things are out of our control. They're way a long way over there, but they still impact us. The upheaval in the world, there's wars and military actions, things that, make us feel even more unsafe than we did. Sometimes it's the economic or other security concerns that we may have that are going around. We recently here in Southern California had to deal with all the fires. And whether we're immediately impacted by that or not, news and social media and conversations that we have with people all bring that stuff into our life. And we got to deal with it. These are other concerns that impact our sense of safety and normalcy. The normalcy that has already been wiped out, already been, washed away. And the woundedness that we feel. And now we got more coming on us. And we gotta deal with that. We gotta manage that. So those are some of those factors that are out there that continue to play on in your grief and in your life. Then I like to think about some of the stuff that really is vital in our grief. And I looked at that woman and she's holding up a small baby in her arm. Family has a way of not only calling things out from us that we need, and they still need to be fed and watered and clothed and bathed and whatever those kinds of things may be. But family has a way of pulling us forward into life. And some of this stuff is really important, and we may not think about this. I was talking with a woman recently, and she talked about how terribly she was missing her husband. She says, but I take care of my grandchildren, and it keeps me looking forward to the future. And what a great example of how she was caught in her grief and wanted to be a part of that and everything. And yet at the same time, life and the future out there was making her kind of pull her head up and look and be engaged in some new stuff. The calendar has a similar effect for us as well. At one day after another, week after another, month after another, and everything, moving through that calendar requires us to adjust. We live each day figuring out what and how it is that we're going to make it through this one. Seasons change, they come along and they move through them, and those seasons bring different holidays to us, and we have to to engage with that in whatever way it would be. And these are things that call us to move and to look forward into our life. This stuff is vital. It's important. And it helps us to move into a direction of adjusting to the life that we're going to live now without that person in our life. And that's really important. Well, there's another one too. That stuff is vital, but there's also some stuff that really is helpful, but it can be problematic too. It's kind of paradoxical in that way, and it holds both sides and stuff. That woman had a laptop computer in one of her arms. To me, I was thinking about work. I carry mine around with me, and so that's where my mind went. And work can be helpful. It recreates a rhythm for us. If we're still in working age and everything, we have to get up in the morning, maybe get kids out, but at least we have to get up and we have to go to work and do those kinds of things. And those sorts of things help to refocus us towards the future as well. Now, the problem can be that oftentimes in grief, we're told, we're taught, we're socialized that how we manage our grief is by staying busy. And if we just stay busy and everything, we make it through the day, and that's another one behind us. And work is probably our biggest set of busyness in things. But we got to be careful that busyness and that work that we do and the work that carries us forward is not some form of avoidance of our grief. And that can be problematic. It's okay that it's a distraction. Distractions are necessary. Work is one of the biggest ones. It focuses our minds. We have to stay, aware of what's going on in front of us, and the grief doesn't always, come in. But when we're using it to avoid the grief, if we have a moment where that grief comes up, it swells up in us, those grief bursts or those, sudden temporary, upward movements of that grief that can feel like it's going to be overwhelming. If we use, when that stuff comes up, if we allow that to happen to us while we're working, that's a great way of managing our grief and of allowing work to be important to reset our rhythms and move us forward. But it's a good distraction. There are other distractions too, and we need these distractions. We can't always spend all of our time in our grieving self, if you will, or our grieving side of the grieving moments that we have. One of the models of grief that's really helpful is one that kind of envisions grief as like a pendulum that swings back and forth. And part of the time we're over and we're working on our grief and managing the emotions and the loss and the emptiness and the physical manifestations of that grief. But it also, from time to time, swings back the other way onto what we call restoration and restoring our life. This is where the distractions come in. How can we look forward and how can we do some other things that maybe give us some space? Movies can do this, eating out, going to museums or sporting events and cheering for our favorite teams, connecting with families in some way, maybe with a family reunion, although again, that can bring some pain because of the emptiness or the loss that we have and that the empty spot where that person isn't there. Volunteering as well. Doing those kinds of things that move us out, helping and supporting other people. That's when we're working on that restoration and on that side where we're moving forward and adapting and rebuilding a new kind of life. They're all important, these distractions, because they help us to be refilled with energy and give us a new perspective. I go back to that woman who said, I have to take care of my grandkids. They keep me looking forward. They keep me doing for the future. That's really important and really, really helpful. So what is it that you like to do? What might you enjoy doing that, again, sure, it can hurt because maybe your person isn't there, but it can fill you in a different way. Try some of those things. And then finally, the stuff that I think is really important that oftentimes we don't consider, and that is self-care. In that picture, that woman's arms are up above her head, and it looked to me like she was stretching, maybe in a yoga pose or something like that. But, yoga or whatever it may be, however you take care of yourself is really critical and vital. It adds to the distractions, but it also does more and refills us and rebuilds us and strengthens us as we work and live through each day. It revives our energy, this sense of self-care, and revives our interest in the world and in those things that are around us. You might try something like taking a walk in the neighborhood, and not just a walk, but being slow about it. Again, there's that time that we need. Being slow and pausing to take a look at a new flower. It's springtime right now. Flowers are blooming, the trees are budding out, and pausing and looking and seeing how the sun shines through the trees or the wind as it blows around. To look at those kinds of things helps us connect with nature, helps us to understand that life is still moving and doing new and wonderful things. And that can be very powerful for us. Maybe you've got some spiritual practices, things like prayer, meditation, yoga. Maybe it's you are regular with pilgrimages or attending worship or singing in a choir. Whatever your own spiritual understanding is and how you tend to that spiritual side of you, that's a deep part that has been wounded by the death of your person. Tend to that. Tend to that and let that be something that your movement through not only enlivens you, but helps to create a foundation for you in understanding where your life is now and what you're living. Some of the other great things about self-care are really almost, just right in front of our face. And that's like getting good sleep and resting. You don't always have to sleep well or something like that, but rest in the afternoon. Sometimes it's hard to sleep, but do the best you can to allow your body to come back together, to get some energy. Good food does that too. Feeding yourself well to power your body so that you are able to have the energy, that your body has the nutrition and the food, literally, to power itself so that it can grieve. Really important. Grief is hard. You are challenged, and your whole world has been changed. You are still living in real life, though, with all of that other stuff going on around you. I hope this will help you to recognize the complexity of the stuff that's bearing down on you in your grief. I hope that you offer to yourself some kindness and direct yourself to be more helpful in the things that I've mentioned. These are just a few, but there's a lot of other kinds of things too. Let your own self direct you towards this new life that you're living and grieving with all of that kind of stuff. I want to thank you for being here, be it in real time or sometime in the future that maybe you're watching this. We hope that you found something helpful. Not the whole thing, maybe just a piece here and there, whatever it is that will help you manage your grief and find something that will make this be less mystifying and less overwhelming for you. I want to thank Jessica as well for monitoring the feed and providing so much support to the community here on our pages. Put your thoughts down in the chat so that we can continue this conversation. Ask questions. We'll get back with you. We ask you to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Be a part of the community so that we can be together in our journey through grief. This time now, we are sending you peace while you grieve your loss.